All right. Well, welcome to the Century House Historical Society's annual meeting featuring an actual person who knows about mining and people, Mr. Joe Palumbo. And woohoo!
Good to take over from here.
You're good to take over.
So my name's Joseph Palumbo. I've specialized in mining history of the Shawangunk Ridge for going on about 15, 17 years now. My start into this originated with the Mammoth-Kitting and Ulster mines of southern Ulster County, and it's expanded into the Rosendale area. So what we're going to be covering today and discussing today is not mine operations in general, but the lives and the daily uptake of the individual people who actually worked the mines of the county and worked throughout the ridge lines. We're going to be touching a lot today on the Widow Jane mine here. I've been doing a deep dive over the past week and a half, 2 weeks, through Union archives and everything else, actually into some of the individual miners that used to work in the area, dating back to the 1880s, 1890s, and stuff like that. So early on, back into the early edition of mining within Ulster County, which dates back to the approximate 1670s, 1680s, the earliest known documentation of mining within Ulster County and the surrounding areas. Now, the early predation for mining in this county originated in the southern Ulster County, Southern Ridge lead mines. This was a very large lead mining valley, all the way up into the 1940s, 1950s. The last lead mine of the Shawangunk Ridge closed down in 1962. Now, the unique thing with the mining in general of Ulster County and throughout this ridge line and valley that we are in is the historical significance it plays in American history. Some of the mines of this valley have played parts in very important aspects of American history. Now, one of the big aspects, and this is what I've been doing a lot of deep diving into, compliments of Henry here, is unionization of mining within the Shawangunk Ridge. Now, by all the researching and digging I have done, there's only two predominant mine worker unions prevalent within this area. One of them still exists today, and that would be the UMWA, United Mine Workers of America, which had its start and origination in the Pennsylvania and West Virginia coal fields back in the 1860s, 1870s. It had its start with an organization known as the Mullen Maguires, which is viewed as a socialist and terroristic organization up until the 1920s, 1930s. Now, around 1887, 1890, the UMWA started making maneuvers into other aspects of mining. They started to expand out of the coal fields because there was having a slower slump at the end of the Industrial Revolution in coal mining as they were starting to find other alternative fuel sources outside of anthracite. So the UMWA had its first move into New York and working with miners in this area with a mine that many of you here might be familiar with, known as the Mammoth-Kitting mines of Wurtsboro. Now, the UNWA started around here with its first official chapter around 1893, 1894. And then it slowly expanded up here into Rosendale within the cement mines up here in Rosendale around the 1895, 1996 time period. Now, the big innovation of the unionization and the unions coming into the area actually equated to was better wage and a better way of living for your average mine worker in the mines. Now, most of your mines, and by the little bit of information I can find on the cement industry in this area with the early days in the mines, is some of the mines in the area paid in mine script. So when you worked in a mine, didn't matter if you were mining iron, coal, dolomite here in the Widow Jane, copper down in the Ulster mines of Ellenville, you were paid in mine script. Mine script was a company-produced currency that you would be paid with. You were not paid in American currency. And that was one of the big pushes unionization started pushing for, is the abolishment of mine script. The last company to do away with mine script, paying employees, occurred in 1964.
Wow.
Is the last mining company did away with paying in mine script. And today, that company that was the last one to do away with Minescript is one of the biggest coal mining producers in the world. And that is the Peabody Mining Company. And with my digging I've been doing recently, Peabody Mining actually had some connections with the dolomite industry here in Rosendale. They had a very small connection with, I'm forgetting the name of it, you were discussing this one, the old mine that's lost up above the trestle. I'm forgetting the name of that one.
Black Smoke.
Black Smoke Mine. Peabody Mining Company had stakes in the Black Smoke Mine through conjunction. Now, the Peabody Mining Company was a big driving factor trying to push away from unionization. Unions were considered a threat to the bottom dollar. Because if we pay you in Minescript, we pay you in mine currency, and don't pay you in United States money, it's more money in our pockets. It's more money in our coffers. That was one of the big driving factors for the unionization, especially when it started moving up here into the Rosendale area with the cement mines. Now, some of the advantages that union workers had here in the Rosendale area, why it was so easily to take effect, is instead of all these different mines in the area being all under one company, almost every mine up here was its own independent operation. So complements of that fact is why unionization took off here. It was actually, Rosendale actually was one of the big driving factors to bring an official chapter of the UNW of A to New York. So complements of that was one of the big driving factors. Now, one of the things that we're actually working on is we actually managed to find some tag out sheets for some of the Rosendale mines from the unions. So we're working on actually compiling a script of actual mine workers that worked in these mines, which at one point, once we have that completed, it'll be an interesting insight into the people that work these mines. Now, some of the interesting things, especially with the dolomite mines here, is when you're working in a limestone mine, you go away from some of the other dangers you deal with in other mining situations. So in coal mines, you get a lot of coal dust into the air. You can create an ailment known as black lung, or more commonly referred to as silicosis if you want to get technical. Now, one of the advantages with your average day person, your average run-of-the-mill miner, and say, for example, the Widow Jane mine here, you don't have the same quantity of dust and material getting in the air. Miners who work the dolomite mines here in Rosendale had up there in some of the longer life expectancies of mine workers in the Northeast. They actually had the longest expected life expectancy working these dolomite mines of the area. Most reports of miners in this area had life expectancies up into their 60s. Where you compare the same time period to Pennsylvania and the coal mines, average life expectancy of a miner of coal mine is 35.
Wow.
If you were lucky. Now, one of the other big advantages that made life for a miner in the dolomite mines around here is an aspect that us coal miners and coal mining in general deal with, is something we like to call fire damp. You don't get that in limestone situations. So I'm assuming people here, if you're big into history, have ever heard the old saying, the canary in the coal mine. In mines like this, you didn't need to worry about that. So what fire damp is methane gas. Now, working, for example, even here in the Widow Jane mine, which is one of the decent-sized operations here in Rosendale, due to Rosendale being very popular in the pillar and room setup for mining, you had very good airflow. So you had a great means of keeping airflow and good oxygen down in the deeper portions of the mines. You had a good means of circulating bad air, carbon dioxide, and just natural gases that would be leached out of the ground. So that also helped prolong longevity and the life expectancy of the miners in the mines. It also allowed for a different aspect that you could get into with the mine workers here. It was easier to produce a hot meal in the mine. So one of the big issues that was a big problem when you look into coal mining, a lot of coal miners would have to eat stuff that was made ahead of time. They would have to carry on them all day in their clothing or in a pail, and most time a miner's lunch pail was a little metal bucket they would carry around with no lid. Now, you go out here in the Widow Jane, and you'll see water dripping from the ceiling. It's damp. It's humid. You're carrying around your food in an open lid bucket all day. What's going to happen to it? It's going to get wet. It's going to get humidity in there. It's going to get dust and debris on it. When you were in an underground situation and you got all that humidity in there in the mine, especially when they'd be pumping out the water constantly, you weren't eating too well down in the mines. good majority of the time, miners would skip meals when they would work. It was easier. When you get mines like the Widow Jane, massive open pillar mines, which are all room and pillar build, high ceilings, good airflow and ventilation. Early days of mining, the way of producing light is calcium carbide lamp. It's an open flame. It generates heat. You could pack a sealed, unprepared item in a sealed wax paper and recook and reheat it down in the mine. It would enable miners to actually have a warm meal underground. Some other documentation I've read up on another dolomite mine farther north, not in the Rosendale area, is some dolomite mines actually had kitchen services that prepared meals for miners in the 90s, early 1910s. Because they came to the realization a good worker is a well-fed worker. That was the advantage with smaller operations, such as the Widow Jane and stuff like that, or the black smoke mines. When you can take care of the employees and prolong the longevity of an employee, you got a better environment, you got higher production rates, you got better profits, you have your bottom dollar is going to be higher. Now, the advantage with a lot of certain mines is, especially like, for example, here at the Widow Jane, which has a lot of stuff still around. Widow Jane did everything in-house. You had the mine here producing the dolomite for the limestone. You had the kilns right here on the other side of the property to cook everything down in quicklime. You could decrease your expenditure by doing everything yourself. Not all mines had the capability. Some mines would have to ship stuff out to other locations to do the cook-down process. But doing everything in-house, cooking their own limestone down to produce the quicklime themselves, it allowed them to have more expenditure to look into profits and other aspects to prolong and benefit the employee. Now, the first notes and the only documentation I found so far pertaining to unionization of the mine workers with the Widow Jane mine itself dates around to about 1896, 1897. And that's under the UMWA, United Mine Workers of America. Now, the Black Smoke mine, their workers were under a different mine union. They were under what was known as the United Federation of Mine Workers. Now, the United Mine Workers Federation does not exist anymore. It's long gone history. It shut down. Well, let me rephrase that. It was shut down around 1961, 1962. The United Mine Workers Federation was a socialist union. It was heavily influenced by the Soviet Union and the socialist ideology. During World War II, the United Mine Workers Federation also started taking a lot of ideologies, and this is where it really became bad with this particular union. They started taking a lot of ideology from fascism as well. The United Mine Workers Federation was the first known organization within the United States that had a heavy membership of people that were under the fascist ideology. But it had its start with early socialism.
Can you just define your definition of fascism?
So several of the main members that ran the United Mine Federation were very diehard supporters of the Nazi regime. Most of the people involved with the founding of the United Mine Federation were of German descent. So a lot of the early unionization in the United States was segregated. The UMWA, which its predecessor was the Molly Maguires, the UMWA in its early days were comprised of Welsh, Irish, and Scottish miners. So the UMWA was most of your Celtic, Gaelic people of descent. So it was a lot of Irish people, it was a lot of Welsh, and a lot of Scottish people that formed the early days of the UMWA. Another nickname for members of the UMWA and the Molly Maguires were the Sons of Molly. The early days of the mine wars in the United States, or what is commonly referred to as the Union Wars or the Coal Wars, there was an organization and a very strong proprietor of unionization, and her name was Molly. She was an Irish immigrant from Ireland who had moved over here. Her sons and her husband worked in the coal mines. She ended up losing both her sons and her husband to the coal mines. Whether it was an accident with rocks caving or in the case of her two sons who were killed in a fire dam explosion.
Sure.
And after the death of her two sons, she became one of the biggest supporters and one of the biggest driving forces of unionization with mine workers in the United States. Whole divisions of laborers rallied under her name to promote unionization. She was arrested on multiple occasions due to union work and stuff like that. The United Mine Federation, their connection is they had more of an ideology that only people of certain areas were eligible to be members of the union. They would only allow certain people and certain nationalities to join the union. So the UMWA, it didn't matter. If you dug underground and you worked in a hard rock mine, you could become a member of the UMWA. They expanded in the 1930s to include iron workers. They expanded to include the mill workers that processed the raw materials. Originally, the UMWA was strictly for the people that dug in the mines. But into the 1910s, 1920s, Great Depression era, it expanded to include the people that worked in the industries that supported the mines. Now, UMWA still exists. I am a UMWA member myself. We're down to one district left in New York. That's all we have left. And currently, UMWA only has 30,000 members. We are one of the smallest unions left in the country because a lot of mines are moving away from unions again, which is a crying shame. Because nowadays, most people look at a union and they get negative insight into unions. Back in the early days, the unions are what protected the workers. Now, there's very limited documentation and very limited resources I was able to find of union wars occurring within the state of New York and within the Shawangunk Ridge. There was no major conflicts. There was a few picket line protests I could find out about, but very limited. So most of the major conflict of the union wars occurred within the coal fields of West Virginia and Pennsylvania. That never really expanded to this area. So there wasn't any of the big conflicts like the Battle of Blair Mountain or the march up the Susquehanna River that occurred in Pennsylvania. So that was another difference between the areas. We did not have the big driving force or the major corporations or the major players. I'm forgetting the term that would be used for it. We didn't have the barons. You didn't have like the big coal barons that own massive amounts of coal mines out here. Widow Jane Mine, small operation, small fleet of people. They only ran the one mine here. You had the Black Smoke Mine. They had connections to Peabody, but not extensive. Peabody was a financial supporter. They didn't actually run the mine. So when you have the smaller operations and limited input from having vast amounts of different mines you're worrying about, it decreases the amount of issues you're going to have. It allows for more care to be put into the employees and more thought to be put in for things in general. Now, one of the other big advantages you had working the dolomite fields and working around here in general as an average everyday miner is the setup of the mine. So how many of you here have been inside the mine here at the Widow Jane? So I'm assuming everybody here.
Well, I've just been to a concert there, but I haven't like gone into the mine.
You've been into the main thing.
Yeah.
So the Widow Jane, all the mines around here, that main entrance where they do the concert, all of the dolomite mines around here are the same setup. Big, massive, open spaces. I'm going to show a picture on my phone real quick. One of the few pictures I'm going to show today. A comparison of the dolomite mines here in comparison to an iron mine in Pennsylvania, as well as the mammocating lead mine workings. Now, you get into the mammocating mines, or in some of these other operations of different ore types, we chase veins. Whether it's an iron mine, lead mine, copper mine, we chase veins. Copper veins are not big. Lead veins are not big. Dolomite, their deposits are massive. Because dolomite is calcium. So you can use more of the material pulled out of the mine than you can in other mining operations. In the coal mines, we have a lot of waste material we have to dispose of. And I mean a lot. Here, you can use 95% of the material pulled out of here because it's all limestone. This picture here I'm going to pass around is the main adit of the Mamakating mine.
What's the scale on this?
The scale?
Yeah, like how big is that opening at the end?
We're going to be getting
Oh,
into
that's
that.
a track. That's a monorail.
Yep, that is my track.
All right.
So this was actually the main tunnel. This tunnel was chasing a vein. So the whole length of this tunnel, they had to see where they were mining the vein out with inside the mine. That tunnel in size, from that wall to where I'm standing in the wet, and this tall from the ground. That picture was taken 800 yards into the mountain, underground. The largest tunnel within the Mamakating mines is this tall. The smallest tunnel within the Mamakating mines where they dug a vein, on my knees, standing up like this, I don't fit in it. The tunnel ceiling from the floor is this tall. They were working in conditions that small. There's an old song that originates from the coal fields called 6 Foot Coal. You get into the coal mines, conditions are even smaller. You can be chasing a coal vein that starts out the height of the ceiling in here, and you can end up in 6-inch coal that's this tall, and you're chasing that vein through hard rock, and you're on your stomach crawling through that vein, digging that coal out. Dolomite, it's the whole rock. It's more economical. It's a larger production yield in the mine. Conditions all around are better. The floor in this mine is rock. Floor of a coal mine is dust, sediment, and debris. So one of the other advantages you have with dolomite is you can make these big, open, gigantic caverns. You can keep the roofs high. You can keep the tunnels wide. That also is another great way to prolong the longevity of a coal miner. Not a coal miner, dolomite miners in the area. One of the other advantages of the dolomite mines, for example, this one in reference, and me and Henry had actually been looking at this and discussing this about 2 weeks ago, and the two of us were doing a little bit of research in there. Now, the way this mine would have been dug is from the floor to the ceiling. It would have been dug up, not down. For one key reason. You're in the 1890s, 1880s, 1870s, 1860s, the early days of the Widow Jane mine. We don't have front end loaders. We don't have skid steers. We don't have construction equipment. It's all done by hand. There's one advantage you would have to dig that mine, starting at the bottom, working your way up. Gravity. So a lot of room and pillar mines are worked from bottom up. It allows you to use gravity and feed it down. It makes life the miner easier. It makes doing things easier. You're not having to handle that material multiple times. You don't have to have people standing there and picking it up and shoving it off the ground into the mine cart. You can gravity feed it with a chute right into the mine cart. Then roll the mine cart out and dump it right into kilns. Me and Henry are actually looking at this, and I helped him answer a question, 2 weeks ago, something up in the museum here. The wooden platform with the wheels on it. How many of you here have seen it? The unknown object in the museum.
The rail cart?
That's a mine cart. That is a mine cart cat.
Pulled by mules.
Yep. Now, you know the second wheel casters on the inside of it? So on the inside of that mine cart, there's actually a set of tracker wheels on the inside with a opening that is actually lined coming up to the center. That's for actually dumping it. You can actually still see the hinges where the body of it would have actually been mounted. Innovations like that.
From the bottom would drop out?
No, it would actually tip.
Okay.
Like a dump truck.
Right.
It would side dump.
They have rail cars that still do that.
Yeah, that's what.
All coal cars, all ore cars are side dumps. Still is. It's more economical. You can use gravity to your advantage.
Oh.
You undo a pin and it just pivots on its own due to weight.
Because it's kind of like a baby car, like a rockabye baby.
Yes.
Sorry.
Rounded cart, pin, you pull the pin out, and it's going to want to follow the heavier side. You always stack the cart heavy to one side. That stacked weight to one side helps the tip easier. So using gravity and digging up through the ore in the mine would have helped prolong and would have also eliminated a lot of issues. You gotta think, you're in there all day, 12, 13, 14 hours a day, digging dolomite. You're digging the rock out. It's a lot of weight. Most miners were not paid by the hour. You're paid by the ton. Coal mining is still paid by the ton. So each individual miner within the mine, if you're working some of these older workings or these smaller, more confined workings where you're hand digging and hand loading, you're not paid by the hour. You're paid by the tonnage. All mines predating 1910 paid by the ton. So the more you can dig in one day and the less physical strain you have to put yourself through, the more money you can make. With one of the advantages of the room and pillar mines of working up. Now, through some of my looking around and digging around some of the higher elevations of what's available and visible in the mine, you can actually see in some of the areas with some of the stone, you can actually see where they actually had girders implanted into the rock for the support structures for actually working up for the scaffolding. There's several areas where you can still see girders that have been cut off close to the rock area. They're horribly splintered and rusted, but they're there. Now, one of the other big advantages, and I actually find this kind of interesting, is another bit of documentation with the immigration fluctuations and the type of people that would have worked in the mines here in Rosendale. Is there also seemed to be a large influx around 1880 of Welsh people to the area. The Welsh were known for their slate mines. So a lot of people immigrating over from Wales and stuff like that, they work at slate mines of Wales. They come over here and they find easy work doing the same thing in the dolomite mines of Rosendale and surrounding areas. There's a large documentation of Welsh people working the mammocating mines for the lead. So when you're able to immigrate over here and go from what you did in your home country to doing the same thing here, it makes things easier. Now, one of the interesting things I find about the dolomite mines here in Rosendale is the purity of the material they were pulling out of here. Rosendale, and I talk to people who I'm related to who work in masonry and through historical documentation. Rosendale cement to this day is still considered unmatched in quality. There's no other hydraulic cement that matches Rosendale cement. So that plays another interesting aspect into the history of this area. And it's something I would actually like to explore more and do more research into. But running chemical testing on materials and minerals gets expensive. Because something about the material in this particular area, and it was only within Rosendale, you don't see dolomite mining up around Kingston. You don't see it down in Ellenville or Wurtsboro or anywhere else on the range. It's only within this township where you have the famous hydraulic cement. So there's something also unique in that aspect with the geological makeup of the ground and the material around in here. Now, one of the other things that I find a bit interesting with the Widow Jane mine in particular that I've not seen in any of the other mines of Rosendale is the leaching buildup. The Widow Jane mine has a unique thing I've seen, and this is the only mine I've seen it here, and I will show some pictures of this as well. The Widow Jane mine has an active lime wash going on within the mine itself. It is actually water-dissolving lime out of the rock and recrystallizing it as solid, pure lime on the walls. I've not seen it in any of the other mines around here. And the Widow Jane mine was noted for some of the more famous items that were made using Rosendale cement. Now looking at the mineral buildup. Specifically in the Widow Jane mine, in comparison to some of the other mines, is the fact that Widow Jane mine maintained one steady flow throughout the whole entire mine. So How many here have walked the rail trail up here in Wartsburg and Rosendale? So you know all the mine entrances along the old railroad bed. You also have the old mine up here by the old silos up here, up past where Iron Mountain is. The mine right up above Iron Mountain that I've been down into, most of that mine is on an angle like this. It's steep. It also branches out like it's chasing veins. By what I've seen, pictures I've seen from inside the Widow Jane, and by what I've seen myself looking at things, Widow Jane had a very nice, gentle slope to it. Especially the fact they went on to use it for growing mushrooms. You go up to the other mines around here that are steep, you couldn't do stuff like that in them. Not at all.
Vertical pitch is too much.
Hmm?
The vertical pitch is too much.
75 degrees.
Yeah.
Up by the silos up here, we actually measured the degree of the main incline going into the mine from the main entrance, and it maxes out at 83-degree incline.
Is that right by the entrance there? Because that's where I've been there, and that's like the steep straight down.
Is it the one with the minecart track trestle coming up of it?
Yeah.
Yep, that goes down. So you see the main steepness right there. It goes straight down, increases to 83 degrees, levels back out to 75 degrees, and maintains that 75-degree incline to the bottom.
Yeah. You don't want to slip and slide go down there.
No, you don't. Now, the unique thing with the Widow Jane, they used horses and mules in here. They used horse-drawn ore carts. It's flat. It's easy to walk. It's not steep. Also, the Widow Jane mine, dolomite was close to the surface. For example, Black Smoke mine, I was doing some research into that recently, found some documentation on the Black Smoke mine. They didn't really start getting into the higher purity dolomite until they got deeper into the mountain. Where the Widow Jane has reports of high quality material coming from the entrance. So that based it for what was unique about this particular location for dropping the mine here. What made this particular spot so unique and special? Well, they were able to keep that incline and that slant well. Because when you put it into consideration, one of the biggest issues when you get into mine workings, and this is something that affects your standard everyday worker in the mines, as you've seen, that incline's steep. Some documentation that I found pertaining to that mine, one of the biggest issues they had out of that mine were people and workers losing their footing on that incline getting into the mine. One of their biggest causes of casualty and injury in that particular mine was fall injuries. All my research into the Widow Jane mine that I've been trying to do, I've not found any documentation on major injuries or consecutive injury causes for workers. I've not found anything like that pertaining to the Widow Jane. I found it for the Black Smoke mine. I found it for the one up over here by the silos. There's no documentation or issues like that that I've seen in pertaining to the Widow Jane. One of the other issues they had with the Black Smoke mine were cave-ins. A lot of the mines along the railroad tracks, they had major issues with cave-ins, and it's very well documented. Widow Jane, I found documentation pertaining to one cave-in and one cave-in alone.
Superior engineering.
Also the material. Also the ground. One of the other big things to put into consideration in comparing the Widow Jane mine to the other mines close to the railroad tracks, what's right there? Train tracks. One of the big things the early day of railroading is what they call rail blow or hammer blow from the trains. They ran steam locomotives, steam piston. Every rotation in that piston, every cycle of that piston was a hammer blow into the track, shake the ground horribly. Pennsylvania, that was a big issue in the coal mines causing cave-ins with railroad tracks when they had railroad tracks on top of shafts close to the surface. Hammer blow from the locomotives would cause the ground to vibrate and cause cave-in issues. Widow Jane's far enough away from the railroad where you don't have to worry about that vibration. It's into harder stone, harder rock, harder material. So like you look in the main entrance area, there is no major signs of crackage. There's not a lot of major fissures. There's not a lot of widowmakers hanging from that ceiling. There's not even slots where they would have been hanging. So that was another big killer of workers that worked in the mines. It's what we call a widowmaker. It's a large slab you have up in the ceiling It's cracked completely around, forms a fissure across the top of it due to water, ice expansion, freezing. Rocks falling from the ceiling have killed more miners than anything else in the mine, especially when you get into dolomite, iron, and stuff like that. It's falling debris that you gotta have your most eye out. It's the biggest killer in mines, especially outside of coal. Number one killer in a coal mine is black lung. And if that's not what gets you, it's the explosions. It's another big thing, and this can apply here to the Widow Jane. It can apply to any of the mines here in Rosendale. One of the other big issues you got to put in consideration. You get a fine particulate material. It's super fine, like we're talking talcum powder consistency. Even lime and talcum powder consistency, even this dolomite, can become explosive if you have enough of it in the air. So when you have these workings and you're blasting and you're digging and you're grinding and you're breaking rock up, it produces dust. It produces a lot of dust. And when you look at the Widow Jane mine, or a lot of the mines in this area, they have many large, heavy openings in them. They're tall, they're wide, circulate airflow. So I had to do some research into this, into a different aspect, and look outside of the mining approach of this, but I had to look into modern day lime works. Modern day operations where they actually cook and deal and work with lime, mainly, and I found documentation of this in production of slack lime. When you get the fine particulate lime from quicklime or limestone in general and get it in the air, and you get a hot enough flame at the right consistency to that dust in the air at a high enough concentration, lime burns fast and it burns hot. But then here brings up the other problem with lime. When lime is exposed to high temperature, it produces quicklime. Does anybody know what the issue with quicklime is when you expose it to water?
Turns into cement.
Nope.
No.
Turns into acid.
Quicklime, when mixed with water,
High alkali?
it combusts.
Yeah.
What?
Quicklime, when exposed to water, is flammable. Slack lime is produced from quicklime by introducing water to it in a slow, controlled environment. When you take a hunk, for example, we use this as an example. You take a chunk of quicklime the size of this and throw it into a bucket of water, it's going to explode.
What?
It'll actually cause an exothermic reaction. It generates so much heat, it'll cause a steam explosion.
That's maybe a little off topic, but limelight.
Yep.
Oh.
Lime was used in early illumination.
Yeah, limelight. That's
Yep.
the concept, is that they were using the lime.
They
to
were using
create
quicklime.
this light that was so vibrant, and that's where the limelight. You're in the limelight. You know.
Yep. It was specifically a mix of, and my research this week has delved into that as well for the use of lime and dolomite and stuff like that. So one of the mines here in Rosendale actually sold quicklime to a company that produced light bulbs using lime. It was,
And flash bulbs.
Yep.
Specifically.
Lime was a very, especially in the early days of photography, quicklime was used for making photography flash powder.
Oh, that flash power you see in movies.
The old
limelight.
days, it would be a mix of magnesium and quicklime.
Yeah.
It would produce a very strong exothermic reaction, producing high, very bright light.
Like blue.
Wow.
It was so hot. White hot.
Now, documentation of another aspect of the use of quicklime, and I don't know if it would have been used here at the Widow Jane. I've not found any documentation. I've not found anything equating to it being used here. Quicklime out west in the central United States and Canada, they would use quicklime for exothermic reactions for actually mining. They would use the quicklime as a means of actually breaking rock because it's exothermic. You shock the material with high heat really quickly to a cold surface, causes rock to crack. Heat fracturing is still used in some aspects of mining to this day. It's not common anymore, but it's used for when you're trying to do small, finer, controlled areas. So if you want to slab a small surface off a particular area, you heat shock it. You have more finer control. It's one of the big aspects, like for example, and there's tons of signs of this in the Widow Jane, blasting. Now, early days of, now here's a good question for you. What is the earliest documentation of the Widow Jane mine being worked? Do you know
As
of?
far as I know, it actually was not one of the earlier mines because this kept being a farm. And so I think it's from the 1860s, really kind of
So
late into the game.
1860s. We'll go with that as documentation. Back in the 1860s, early days of mining, you didn't have dynamite. Dynamite was a later innovation that revolutionized mining. Early days of mining, you used black powder. There is signs of black powder blasting inside the Widow Jane mine that I have found. Now, in the early days of blasting with gunpowder, those boreholes for blasting were drilled by hand. Now, one of the biggest issues early days of mining that made the life of a normal everyday miner horrendous was blasting. Now, what's the keynote of gunpowder? It's flammable. It burns. You put a pile of gunpowder on top of the table and light it, and it burns quickly, it burns fast, and produces a lot of smoke. And you can ignite gunpowder with a simple open flame. I can take the lighter out of my pocket and ignite gunpowder. Early days of mines, like the Widow Jane, 1860s, what did people use for light? They used calcium carbide lamps, or they used an open candle. Especially early days, there's lots of pictures around in documentation of early days of miners using an open candle with a copper plate or a brass plate behind it to shine the light around, give them illumination. You're handling highly flammable gunpowder with a helmet on with an open flame.
Sorry.
And they're moving around, and the average powder keg bought by a mine that is sold in the United States, and I'm going to use New York as an example because I have documentation, I've seen papers pertaining to the Mamketting mines. The powder reservoir that they would buy powder from in New York State only sold powder to mines in 50-gallon barrels. They were 100 pounds of gunpowder per barrel.
How tall were they?
They're about the size of the whiskey barrels up here.
Okay.
So about the size of those whiskey barrels. They would be packed full of gunpowder to the brim. You're underground. It's dark. You have a calcium carbide lamp on your head, and you have to crack open that gunpowder barrel.
Smoking a cigarette.
Yeah. Smoking at the same time. Or smoking a pipe.
More so, more
Just-
so.
Don't make me pull mine out of my pocket because I flip more fuses with my pipe than I can shake a stick at.
Oh, God.
Wow. It's something we still do, but we get yelled at for nowadays. So you got a calcium carbide lamp or a candle. You got wax dripping from the candle. That wax can drip off that candle, burn it.
Right.
And you're cracking open a barrel underground using that candle or that calcium carbide lamp, and you're on source of light, and you're cracking open a 100-pound barrel of gunpowder. Ooh, I'll think about it.
When did they transfer from to sticks?
So the transition, there's an intermediate. They did not go strictly from gunpowder to sticks of dynamite. There's an intermediate period. Dynamite was invented strictly for mining. Predating dynamite is nitroglycerin.
Natural what?
Nitroglycerin. Now, there's a lot of stigmatism, compliments of Hollywood about nitroglycerin. There's a lot of stigmatism about it. Nitroglycerin in its liquid form is not as deadly or volatile as you would think. But working with pure nitroglycerin has another side effect. You're working with nitroglycerin in a mine, and you're underground, and you got somebody of my build working in a mine. Now, the early days, especially in the 1800s, most mine works in the early 1800s, whether it's coal mines, a lot of other areas, you get people as young as 10, 11, 12 years old working the mines.
The smaller they are, the smaller space they can fit into.
Exactly. A prime example, one of the big aspects of Pennsylvania coal mining is coal breakers. So I'm assuming almost everybody here has been in the museum site. You know the chunks of coal we got up that's up in the museum? Those big chunks? They don't come out of the mine that size. They come out of the coal mine in boulders. Most of the coal we're pulling out of the mine are the size of that hutch right there. They're massive, giant blocks. It's got to be broken down in smaller pieces. That's what coal breakers for. Average age of coal breaking in Pennsylvania coal fields is between 10 and 14 years old. They were small and able to climb around on top of the chutes and get around more nimbly than an adult. 2, they could also easily fit underneath the chutes to clear all the material and dust that fell underneath the chutes out, so they could sell that too. So I found some documentation pertaining to the Black Smoke mine up here. They had stone breakers that broke up the limestone coming out of the mine. They have documentation and reports of people as young as 12 years old breaking limestone, rock, and dolomite. Didn't matter how old you were working in the mines, especially if you came from a mining family, because you didn't have a lot of money. Going back to something I mentioned earlier, mine script. So most of the Rosendale mines paid in mine script. There's only 2 mines I did not find any documentation on that paid in mine script. Widow Jane was one of the ones I could not find anything about mine script on. So that's an interesting fact that I find very intriguing, and I got to do more digging into.
A lot of the people that worked at the Widow Jane had to buy their goods and their wares from the building across the street, which was the company store.
Mm-hmm.
And quite often, their weekly pay was not enough to cover your weekly needs at the company store, so they were perpetually in debt.
That was every mine in the United States. And the big thing looking at that, perpetually in debt. So one of the unique aspects of the unionization of mine workers in the United States. So mine script, especially in the early days, had an exchange rate, and I'm going to use the Black Smoke mine and the Peabody mine for reference, because I know what their script values and what they traded is, because I'm very familiar with the Peabody mines. $1 mine script had a exchange rate to U.S. currency of 5 cents. $1 mine script you could exchange for 5 cents U.S. from the Peabody Company. So every dollar is 5 cents. Fairmont mines, their currency exchange rate was 2 cents to the dollar. You were perpetually in debt. Now, Peabody Mining Company, all their mines, didn't matter what type of mine it was, Peabody had a very, very stringent payout process. Peabody, to this day, pays by the tonnage. Early days, 1870s, 1880s, early days of the Peabody Company, their pay rate to the ton was 15 cents a ton. You had daily tonnage requirements to be paid. So one of the most well-known Peabody mines of West Virginia, which was a pivotal mine in the mine wars and the Union Wars, they had a daily tonnage requirement per worker, 8 tons a day. In order to make your day's pay, you had to produce anywhere between 8 to 15 tons of material per day.
15 tons.
Exactly.
16.
Over and deep
It's
debt.
not as dense as stone, right? Stone
coal
is
is
100
light.
per cubic foot, but
Coal is way lighter.
Yeah.
Coal is about half the weight to almost. Anthracite is about 1/4 to half the weight of stone. You get into bismuth coal, that's about 3/4 less than stone. Peat coal is actually the densest. Peat coal has a density of about 1/4 less than stone. Now, dolomite, it's limestone. Limestone's heavy. Which is one of the other big reasons why they dug up instead of down. You get your initial bore going down, then once you get that initial plane in, you start working up. It made life so much easier, less strain. One of the biggest issues, and I found documentation for this in a dolomite mine, and specifically not a dolomite mine, but a limestone mine out west, that did the same kind of operation as here with room and pillar. The issue this mine had with the way they did it is they mined starting at the top and they worked down. The biggest issue this particular mine had, and still to this day, because this mine is still in operation, this mine's biggest problem is back injuries from loading limestone and picking the limestone. Limestone's got a lot of weight to it. And you look at some of the size of the boulders lying in the mine here that are laying on the ground, it's about the size of rock you're going to be picking up. Most times you have maybe 1 or 2 people loading mine carts. So when you hear the term miner, in historical reference, a term of miner did not refer to everybody in the mine. Only people that were referred to as a miner back in the day were people who had their mining papers who actually dug the ore. So you had other laborers within the mine. Sometimes they would go in, like in coal fields, they were known as mules or muckers or muck boys. They were the people that were in charge of actually loading the material in the mine cart. So the actual miners were the people that dug the ore historically. So when you hear the reference of a miner, it's the people that do the digging. It's not the people doing the loading. It's not the people laying minecart track in the mine. It's not the people that's going in there and sharing up tunnels and putting in the lighting or doing other work in the mine. The term miner refers strictly to people that did the digging. So a good majority of the time when people talk about miners, they're not talking about all the other people that worked in the background behind the miners. For prime example, one of the big things in West Virginia history, how many people here are familiar with the Coal Wars of the United States? I'm assuming
Vaguely, yes.
I'm assuming not many, okay. The Coal Wars was a situation of American history stretching from approximately 1870 until 1933. And it was a situation of unionizing. Now, the Coal Wars predominantly occurred in Kentucky, Virginia, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania. Some of the most noticeable issues of the unionization period occurred within the coal fields because it was the most notable. This is the largest industry of mining within the United States at the time period. Now, the most noticeable, most famous aspect of the Coal Wars was a simple event known as the Battle of Blair Mountain. Occurred in the 1920s, 1930s, around that time period, after World War I. So World War I has already occurred and ended.
This is Pennsylvania.
West Virginia. Blair Mountain, West Virginia. Farmingdale. You got all these people and these veterans that come back from World War I. They come home. They go back to working in the mines. They're bringing home their experience and knowledge from fighting in World War I. You have another increase in union movement. You have another increase in people trying to unionize and bring safer work environments, doing away with mine currency. You have a lot of these young miners who went away to fight in World War I who are finally being paid in a normal American currency at a normal pay rate. They were making 20 times what they made in the mines. That provoked a large amount of union movement after World War I. World War I was the big deciding driving factor that pushed for unionization even more so than in the 1800s, in the 1880s, 1890s. Some of the biggest movements of the Coal Wars or the Union Wars occurred during the Great Depression. Battle of Blair Mountain happened right at the very beginning of the Great Depression, and the Battle of Blair Mountain is the biggest armed insurrection of American history outside of the American Revolution and Civil War. The Battle of Blair Mountain got so bad to the point the U.S. federal government had to send in the army to stop it. So, who here has heard of a company known as the Pinkertons?
Yeah.
Everyone here is probably familiar with the Pinkerton Detective Agency. The original name for a Pinkerton agent was a union breaker.
Mm-hmm.
They would be sent in by the mine companies and the mine owners to break union movements up. Battle of Blair Mountain, post-World War I. One of the biggest innovations to warfare of World War I was the innovation of the plane and dropping bombs from the air. Battle of Blair Mountain was the first time an armed insurrection and a union strike resulted in the Pinkerton Detective Agencies using aircraft to drop explosives on striking miners within Blair County, West Virginia. The Battle of Blair Mountain lasted about, I want to say, a week, 2 weeks. It was very short-lived, but was extensive. The animosity and the fact that the Battle of Bear Mountain went on had a very outreaching effect within the unionization world of mines, reaching as far up here into New York, Massachusetts. It affected unions in the mines everywhere. Because for the union, the Battle of Bear Mountain was considered a loss. Some of the big names that organized the protests that would lead up to the Battle of Bear Mountain were arrested and charged for treason, for fighting for better work environments.
Arrested by who?
Federal government.
Yeah, my sister-in-law's uncle died in a tent because it was a company town. And when the miners went on strike, they were kicked out of their homes because the mine owned their homes. And they had to live in tents in the middle of winter. And this uncle died as an infant because the family was living in a tent in the winter.
Yep.
Because they were on strike.
That was the big thing. One of the big things, and there's an aspect a lot of people want to think about nowadays. If you worked for a coal mine, and the greatest way I've ever heard it described came from an older gentleman I've met once. And he sadly passed away now, and I met him when he was in his 90s. And I met him back early 2000s, and he was 94 when I met him. He had his start in the coal fields of Pennsylvania, West Virginia, around 1937, early 1940s. Drafted in the World War II, served in World War II, came back, went back to the mines. When he first started in the mines, and when he was growing up as a kid, his father was a coal miner. And the best way I've ever heard of being a coal miner described back in the day, you were a paid slave. Because your house was owned by the company. You shopped in the company store. Everything about your life was ruled and controlled by the company. That even equated up into the mines here in Rosendale. As he mentioned, company store used to be right over here. Company stores were a great way for the mine owners, big wealthy people who never stepped foot in a mine, to keep their pockets more in line. So, because if you own a company store and you're buying material at bulk, you're buying it for a fairly cheap price. But you have all your employees who are required to shop in the company store, who are earning money, then spending their own money on the store owned by the company, buying the goods the company's providing. Where's that money going back to?
Typically, be buying currency for that one industry. It's basically like getting your Sam's Club discount, and you can only use it at Sam's Club, but you work at Sam's Club, and they're gonna make sure you don't get paid a livable wage.
Exactly. One of the documentations I found, and I haven't found too much on this, but I know of this from the Mammocating mines. Mammocating down in Wardsboro, New York, assuming most people are familiar with Wardsboro here. Wardsboro mines had a company town. That's what gave rise to the town of Mammocating. The town of Mammocating originated as a company mine town. D&H Canal came through and caused it to increase and actually become an actual legitimate township.
Was Rosendale a company town?
Rosendale was not a company town. Rosendale predates mining. So Rosendale was established before mining really kicked off in this area. As Henry said, this mine here used to be a farm. Just happened to find a very high quality dolomite deposit here on the property. Rosendale had its connections with three major industries: the New York Central Railroad, the D&H Canal, and farming. That's where Rosendale had its origins from. Then it became a mining boom town. Ellenville had its start as a simple little farming community, had a massive mine boom, had a big industrial boom. Now look at Ellenville today. There ain't much of anything left. Rosendale, in my opinion, is doing better than Ellenville is. The only mine within Rosendale I could find any leeway to having a company-owned town concept was the Black Smoke mine. That's mainly due to the fact that it was partly co-hosted with the Peabody Company. And
Up Fifth Lake, the Binneywater mines there, they had different encampments where they were basically each group where they were coming from, whether German encampment, they
Yeah.
they basically camped in together as a group, and they were doing farming and a lot of self-sustainability there. On that one parcel, I know it's one of our larger mines.
So similar concept to that one there. There's another well-known mine out west. I can't remember if it's Montana or North Dakota. It's known as the Silver Moon Mine. It was a silver mine, big silver mining town. And even though the mine's been abandoned now for going on 100 years, the town still exists. It's completely abandoned, but the town still stands. After being abandoned for over 100 years, the last resident of the town died in 1987, and she was the caretaker of the town. And the town is preserved in history because they broke down each section of town into villages. So you had the main town, and then each section of the town was divided up into individual villages. Chinese village, Irish village, German village, African American village, Russian village. That occurred here, as she said, it occurred here in Rosendale. It occurred down in Mamkinning mines, even Pennsylvania coal fields. Mining towns were segregated heavily. In the mines, you were segregated heavily. Based on your nationality, dictated what you were allowed to do in the mines. For prime example, West Virginia coal fields, Fairmont Mining Company. If you want to be, say, for example, if you want to try to work your way up and you had your heart set on becoming a blaster in the Fairmont Mining Company, unless you were Irish, you were not eligible to be a blaster. Only people allowed to work with explosives in the Fairmont Mining Company in the 1870s, 1880s were Irish people. The company was Irish owned. There was another mine in West Virginia not too far from there. It was British owned. People that worked that mine were of British descent, and the owners were of British descent. The only people that could work up and get high-end positions within the mine had to be of British descent.
Joseph, I was telling you just before, my wife and I took a vacation to Colorado just about 6 weeks ago. And we happened to figure, let's go for a day trip and see something interesting. And we found about a town called Leadville, which is 10,200 feet elevation. It's the highest elevation of any incorporated city in North America. It's out there. There's nothing else around there except mountains. But back in this era, it became a boom town for mining. And there were about 30,000 people that lived there at that time, which is a lot of people at that time. And it's just like when you said the company town and you make the money, then they get it back. This town became fabulously wealthy. You know, not the miners, but the storekeepers. And well, anyway, when mining shut down, although it's actually still mining something today, some component in aluminum that they're mining still up there.
There's 2 active mines in Leadville. There's 2 active mines in Leadville. One of them is mining a material used in lead processing. Don't ask me what it is. I don't know off the top of my head. It's used in lead processing to produce aluminum. Other material mined in Leadville is higher up the mountainside by about 3 miles above Leadville, and it's a gold mine.
A gold mine.
It's a small gold mining operation. Now, going on the sense of boom towns, everybody here's heard of Sacramento, California. Sacramento, California only exists in the capacity it does nowadays due to gold mining. San Francisco was a gold mining boom town. And there's an old saying I heard, and I really like the saying, we wouldn't have Sacramento if it wasn't for the fact that miners like to spend money. One of the big issues and one of the biggest standpoints miners like to do, and it's an issue we still deal with today, people that work underground in mines were known for 2 major things.
Drinking.
We're known for our drinking, and we're known for our smoking. There are 2 historic pubs in Sacramento that are still around, only compliments of the gold rush. So all the miners that go out and do their prospecting, all the prospectors, all the 49ers go out and do their prospecting, go back to town and drink it all away. There was one guy who went to Sacramento, and he went to Sacramento from New York here, hoping to strike it rich as a gold miner in California during the gold rush. Got to Sacramento, and he's standing there, he's looking at everything, and he's like, I have an idea. I know a way I'm going to make rich. He opened a store. He opened a mining supply store. During the California Gold Rush, he was considered one of the wealthiest people in Sacramento because he was only one of the few stores that carried anything and everything you would need for prospecting during the time period. So the store owners during the mining and the mining boom towns that made the most money. Because the miners and the companies had to spend their money someplace.
Yeah. Also with the least amount of physical risk.
Exactly. Mine goes out and still make profit owning a store in different mannerisms. For example, talk about Pennsylvania for a second. Pennsylvania has approximately just within the Scranton area running through the western Carbon County area. There are so many towns and villages of Pennsylvania that were mining boom towns. They mined coal. They don't exist anymore. There's a mining boom town that was here in Ulster County that does not exist anymore because the mines went out. That was the Redbridge Mining Company. There was another town between Mamakating and Ellenville, and it was associated with the Redbridge Mining Company and the Redbridge Mine. Redbridge Mine, they had this great insight. They were trying to replicate the success of the Craigsmore Mine. They failed. Craigsmore, Sam's Point, inside Sam's Point Preserve, there are 2 mines in Sam's Point. They are one of the very, very few documented mines on the east coast of the United States that were active silver and gold mines. There are very, very few documented cases of actual underground low deposit gold mines on the West Coast. Shortly after the beginning of the excavation of Craigsmore gold mines, New York decided to pass a nifty little law. So, and this is funny, if you find a gold deposit on your property in the state of New York can come in and seize your property. All precious metal found within New York state limits is automatically owned by the state. That's why gold mining, silver mining are not known within New York. Massachusetts has a similar law. Killed off gold and silver mining within the state. There's none of it. New York nowadays, as of right now, as we're all sitting here in this room right now, New York has only one major mining commodity within the state of New York.
So,
yep. We have two of the top 3 largest salt mines in the United States.
Really?
Yep. One of them is about central New York, up towards the Finger Lakes. The other one is out towards Buffalo and the Niagara area, and that mine, the concept and the thought of it, and seeing pictures of it and going down it at once, absolutely horrifies me. It's under Lake Erie.
Ooh,
wow.
It extends 2 miles out underneath Lake Erie.
Wow.
There's also a mine in Louisiana, which I think is the beer what you're talking about. They were drilling and they actually plunged to the floor of the lake, and the lake flooded into
That was Pennsylvania. That happened twice in Pennsylvania. So there was a Pennsylvania mine in Carbon County, and they were coal mining. A good chunk of the mine was under the Susquehanna River. Susquehanna River in areas is almost comparable to the Hudson in size in some spots. They made a little bit of a mistake, and they put a hole right through the roof of one of the mine adits and through the riverbed.
Wow.
They finally managed to plug the hole and stop the water from flowing into the mine after they dumped 18 loaded rail cars into the hole. And I'm not talking about emptying the rail cars into the hole. They pushed the whole rail car into the hole.
Wow.
They had the full rail car full of material, pushed the material and the whole train car in one go into the hole. Took 15 cars to stop the water flow.
My God.
That was
Then
they were at that point. Think about it.
They
were like
they made the Susquehanna River disappear. It's like, we need to plug this.
whatever it takes, whatever.
No matter what it takes, we need to plug this. 8 months later, they reopened the mine. They got pumped out and they reopened the mine. They kept
Is that a salt
It's
mine?
like a little bibby.
It was a coal mine.
Oh, a coal mine.
They put a hole clean through the riverbed. That's happened twice. Coal mining in and of itself is a very dangerous profession to get into. It's a very dangerous aspect. There's another famous mine in Pennsylvania that's on fire.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Australia.
Forever. That's true.
At some point, it'll burn out the whole entire coal population, the whole entire coal veins in Pennsylvania.
They're talking about condemning a second town because it's spread like.
They already
8 miles.
started doing it.
They already started doing it.
They're condemning a second town. They also had to relocate 2 interstates because of it.
Those mines are deep. When my brother was a miner, he told me that he would go underground, get on a train and travel for 20 minutes underground and get to a place where he was going to work all day, where they couldn't stand up.
The one mine out in West Virginia that I have the most experience with, it's part of the Fairmont Mining Company, Fairmont number 2, which is probably one of the deeper West Virginia coal mines. From the entrance of the mine to the working face of the coal vein is a 2-hour tram car ride.
Wow.
Total depth 1,485 yards underground.
Sure. Interesting thought, but how about, is there a such thing as similar to the bends for the miners coming back up again?
Oh,
Yes.
really?
Yeah. I mean, just it's not humanly possible to do it too
When
quickly.
when you're that deep underground in a mine, you gotta exit slowly.
Slowly.
Because when you're that deep, pressure's
Pressure.
higher than what it
Yeah.
is at the surface. And 2, here's another key aspect most people won't put into consideration. So we were start talking about blasting here a little bit ago. When you set up charges to blast underground, do you think we're all leaving the mine to set those off? We ain't.
Whoa.
You're over 1,700 feet underground, and it's a 2-hour trip to get down to where you're working. You're not going to go all the way back to the surface to set those charges off, spend 2 hours going back down to the working face. You'll go to the end of the tunnel, find a T connection, hang a right or a left, go down one of the other tunnels around the corner, set the charges off. You could be 200 yards away from the detonation, and you're in a tunnel that's maybe the width of the size of this room, sometimes even smaller. And you're setting off 100 pounds of explosive charges. And we're talking full yield dynamite. We're talking ANFO. And one of the interesting things, and you would never think about this, most people would never put consideration to it. When you set off an explosive, explosives work by creating pressure. When you're in a tunnel underground, you're setting off 100 pounds of explosives in an underground tunnel, and you're 200 yards away from it, and you got that pressure wave coming through. That brings in another unique challenge, because that increases the pressure down underground. That pressure created by that explosion takes a long time to equalize out to the surface and equalize back out to normal pressure. That's another aspect where miners can get the bends.
Mm-hmm.
Bends kills coal miners. It doesn't only kill divers, it kills coal miners.
Yeah.
For a prime example, I believe it's the Brooklyn Bridge. During the construction of the pillars for the Brooklyn Bridge, people that built the pillars that support the Brooklyn Bridge were dying from the bends.
They were using dive bells at one point to
Yep.
get to in the excavation part of it.
And to keep the river water out and sediment out, they were pressurizing those. They were
The
pressurizing
caissons.
those davits they put down in there to keep the water out. For example, there's a couple mines in Pennsylvania where they intentionally pressurized the mine to keep water out of the mines. One of them sits under the Susquehanna River again. I think we learned our lesson the first time, but no. They keep the mine at a constant pressure of approximately equivalent to if you were about 100 feet underwater scuba diving. They keep the pressure to about equivalent to that. So again, you can get bends working in a mine.
Mhm.
Deeper you go, the more the chances you are to get with it. Now, one of the other big issues, especially when you get into some of the other mines, how do you get fresh air 1,700 feet underground?
Ventilation system.
Type it in.
Ventilation system.
Green plants.
None of those. Most vents on mines were a surface fan
Yeah.
at the mine entrance.
Mhm.
Like,
So the way, especially historically, back in the 1880s, industrial revolution time period, the way they would work the mines, especially deep operations, were by shift. Average mine shift, for example, in one of the iron mines out west in Michigan, they would work 6-hour shifts. You'd have a crew go in, work 6 hours, 2-hour break period with the vent fans running. After the 2-hour break period, they'd send the other crew down for 6 hours. They would alternate out on that 6-2 situation just to give it enough time to circulate fresh air into the mines. One of the later variations and one of the options they found and figured out later on, and we have a few ideas that me and Henry might have found one for the Widow Jane. We don't 100% know. Vent shafts.
We have, in the silo that you see, not the old cement mine silos, but in the middle of the field up on the top, there is a vent shaft silo that was used for the beach mine. And that was specifically toward, it was when you get, it's about 50% of the way in, that's where you find the opening to the vent shaft.
Interesting.
To be made of 6-inch and 8-inch pipes.
Yep.
That they would drill.
And they would also, between layers of the veins that they would follow, they would open up vent shafts in between the layers as well, which was nothing more than a 4x2 foot hole straight to the next level.
Yep. That was one of those common aspects.
Vent shaft.
Innovation being able to straight bore drill straight down with an actual machine made doing vent shafts a lot easier. Back in the early days before that, the only way you were getting a vent shaft by having a bunch of people go out there with shovels and picks and digging one. There is a mine in Pennsylvania. It's a coal mine that is now a museum. One of the oldest. It was one of the oldest operational coal mines of Pennsylvania. It's now completely a museum, and they have a vent shaft in the section of their mine. The vent shaft is a total of 875 feet long from top to bottom. Was hand dug by a group of miners in 1869.
What's the name of the museum?
Forgetting off the top of my head, but I can look it up and get the name of it to you. It is, I do know it is not just a museum for that particular mine, it is the Coal Miners Museum. This is a museum dedicated to coal mining history. Very great place if you want a great place to go on vacation to, and it's not too far from the Steamtown Train Museum.
Oh, okay.
So it's not too far from Scranton, Pennsylvania. What's unique about that particular museum is not only does it have a massive underground workings, you go into the mine via the old employee tram system. So they actually take you down into the mine
Nice.
via the actual employee shuttle that would run on the minecart tracks. And most of the tour guides for the mine are people that actually used to work the mine.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
So it was only converted to a museum recently, within the past couple of decades. So there are still people alive who still work with this museum as tour guides who were people that originally worked the mine. So you couldn't have a better tour guide for it. But they actually take you down on the employee shuttle through the main entrance. It's only this tall from the ground. It's also a 28-minute ride into the workings. And the mine is on chain. Most of the mine is on chain since the 1860s. So it's all that old school. When you think of a mine shaft with the wooden supports that form those little archways and all that, the mine cart, yep, that's what this mine looks like.
Wow.
But part of that mine museum is also an open pit coal mine.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting spot to go to if you've never been to it.
Underground? Open pit?
Open pit above ground.
Above ground.
This particular mine location was both an underground workings and an open pit workings. The underground workings predate the open pit. Part of the open pit is still in operation to this day and still mined. Subterranean hard rock coal mining is slowly going the way of the dodo. So is underground mining in general, and any line of the work is slowly disappearing for very valid reasons.
Risk versus reward.
Risk versus reward, and two, an open pit's cheaper than digging hard rock underground.
Is that the same thing as strip mining?
Open pit, strip mining, same exact thing, different term.
Okay.
The only variations, there are some slight variations. There are specific mines. There's a few here in the United States. There are actual legitimate strip mines. In the United States, the term is used interchangeably a good majority of the time. But actual strip mines are more common. The most famous strip mines are in Germany, where they're mined with what are known as the Bagger 693 giant rotary wheel mining shovels. They're known as continuous miners.
Where I grew up in Pennsylvania, there were underground mines and there were strip mines, and then there were these big piles of stuff called bony.
Bony tailings.
That's the rubble.
Bony is most commonly referred to as the rubble from a strip mine. Tailings is referred to most of the time as rubble from an underground work. But pretty much at the end of the day, they're both the same concept. You're good.
Trading mining towns.
Now, I have a quick question for Henry here, because you might know this one. With the operation of the Widow Jane here in its entirety, was the Widow Jane ever serviced by the Wallkill Railroad? Or has it always been the canal for the Widow Jane?
I don't know, but as I said, since the canal was right here, I assumed that they wouldn't need that, and the other companies that were not so close to the canal needed the railroad.
So I know, because by some of the documentation, I found a lot of the mines that are along the railroad right away ship all the material out via the railroad. Mining and railroading go hand in hand. If you live in Ulster County, I'm assuming most people in this room are familiar with the railroad known as the O&W. O&W Railroad. The Ontario and Western Railroad its existence is equated to mining. If it wasn't for the mines, the O&W would probably never existed. The O&W was the sole hauler and the sole transporter for the Mamakating mines. They hold coal out of Pennsylvania. All the material, most of the material, especially mine-produced material hauled by the O&W, was shipped to Canada, where it would then be processed and then shipped to other locations, a lot of times back to the United States. Walker Railroad that ran up through here through Rosendale, was known for shipping dolomite. Walker Railroad serviced about 10 dolomite mines within the Rosendale area that I know of. I wasn't positive it served the Widow Jane. I did not find anything about that in that research.
We have the slip.
Yeah, they had the canal slip right here.
On the driveway here.
Yeah, we were.
Two-story building for unloading coal and then unloading.
The Widow Jane stopped production pretty much about the same time around the canal closing down.
The Snyder slip was one of the only privately owned slips along the D&H Canal that was used for the industry, and it brought it directly out to the Hudson down
Into the city.
which is how we got our footprint there.
So Snyder Mine here, the Widow Jane.
Just don't slip on the canal.
And part of the remnants are still there,
Which
which
prior to the cement industry was used as a grist mill. Correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it actually was a grist mill, then they turned into an ore loader for the dolomite.
Which is what you drove over to get to the parking lot.
Yeah.
So you go back to the driving bridge and you look down, you see what's left of the slip.
I wish there was more pictures around of the interior of that.
I may have.
Henry was showing me some of them.
Yeah,
There's insurance.
they're very,
Oh, there are.
yeah,
The Sanborn maps.
They only have the footprint of the building, so you only see the foundation floor plan. You don't really see how tall the building was. You see
Okay, that's Jim. So I was about to say, one of my hobbies on the side is I'm a big model builder. It's like you have full blueprints of the building. It's like I would willingly make a model.
There's some photographs.
Yeah, there's some photographs that show the buildings that were there. Well, we hit 3:00 and you're still going, but this might be a good time to stop.
Great, do it again.
A real quick question, two real quick questions.
Okay.
What's the story with the silos over by the railroad?
The big ones up over there.
Yeah.
So, by what I can dig up and from talking to some people that are associated with the property over there, so those silos were originally built for concrete use. It was a concrete plant. They tried to repurpose them as grain silos, but it didn't really work. It's because you had some of this used for storing quicklime. Then you're going to store edible food in it. It doesn't really go over too well with the commodity market.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know why it's exploded on me.
My other question, earlier on you mentioned lead mining. What was the lead used?
So the Mamakating mines, which are very famous lead mines here in southern New York, produced 80% of the ammunition used by the Union Army in the American Civil War. The Mamakating mines closed in 1905 and then were reopened for World War I and produced lead ammunition for World War I. Mamakating mines were extensive mining operation, and to the point that we haven't fully explored the entirety of the Mammaking mines. But the last known date of operation for the Mammaking mines was 1921. Was the last known day of operation for the Mammaking mines.
I recently heard of, I'm gonna call it a rumor, but that Rosendale itself also had lead mining.
This whole entire valley had lead mining up in the entirety of it. And the big reason why this area, because one of the unique things about our little area in the Shawangunk Mountains here, is we have a very rich mineral deposit of varying different types of minerals. There was copper mines, sulfur, lead, iron, zinc, magnesium, silver, gold.
There's also some semi-precious stone.
Quartz,
Yeah.
another.
Quartz is another big commodity mined out of here. Now these are just rumors, but there's been rumors that diamond has been also mined in the area. Those are rumors. There is no, there's actually no coal deposits in the state of New York. There's never been coal found in the state of New York, shockingly. One of the other things that was mined in Shawangunk Ridge here in Ellenville that has been found, and one of them is in a museum, is the only known surviving example of it. There's a small sapphire, and the Smithsonian was mined out of the Ulster mine in Ellenville. It's found at a total depth of about 900 feet underground. Now, the reason why we have such a rich mineral deposit here is the Shawangunk mountain range is volcanic. Two, another little interesting history tidbit that most people don't realize, and I will touch on this really quickly, as Henry's pointing out that it's probably random. The Hudson River is a fault line. You go down into any of the mines around here, and you can go deep enough. I'm not talking like the shallowness of the Widow Jane. I'm talking you got to be 500-600 feet underground minimum. You can hear the Atlantic and the East Coast tectonic plate grinding.
Oh, I can hear that in the middle of the night. I don't know.
You go underground. When you're underground here in New York, especially in the Shawangunk Bridge, the sound can get so loud that it drowns out your thoughts.
I will have to personally say that at one point I thought it was the water running through the aqueduct that I was hearing. But in the very, very deep still of the night, it's more of a feeling hearing than it is hearing. So it's almost like it's synergy between a slow, low rumble.
My father, who used to work in masonry and construction in New York City, they'd be down in the foundations of the big, massive high-rises, and in the foundations of the high-rises, they were very quiet and listening. They could hear it in those massive foundations.
Oh yeah,
underground. But you go down to the mines where it's raw rock. There's not concrete or other stuff blocking it.
Yeah,
it's a whole different ball game. It's because it's noticeable.
Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing, and I found this out from a friend of mine who specializes in seismic and stuff like that, the East Coast fault line is actually more active and more volatile than the San Andreas fault line.
Really?
Well,
smaller.
we have stations that are being put up all along the Wallkill that are seismic, specifically the NOAA.
Because if you look at the layout of the Hudson Valley, what is the exact center of the Hudson Valley?
I followed, obviously.
To the universe.
Center of the
When
universe.
you run down the Hudson Valley, what is the center of the Hudson Valley?
The center?
Hudson.
It's the Hudson River.
Oh, yeah.
Look how deep the Hudson River is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How deep is it?
Some areas of the Hudson River can be about a mile in width, 800 feet deep down towards the city.
Oh,
Does the vibration that you were talking about affect the aqueduct?
It is tidal all the way up to Albany.
Yeah.
It's salt water all the way up to West Point. From
Brackish
Well-
or
No.
West Point area is brackish, but a good majority coming up the Hudson until you hit West Point is salt water turning into brackish. And
during
once you-
high tide, it's more salt than.
Yes, and once you hit Newburgh and start moving up into Poughkeepsie and Kingston areas, it's fresh water.
The old wooden boats. used to take
Except
water
in
once
droughty
they got
conditions,
Or more salt.
more salt
Yes.
moves in, and they have salt warnings in Poughkeepsie.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Now, Now, going to the aspect of why looking at the mineralogical and looking at it from the mine aspect of this area being volcanic and also a very big seismic hotspot is we have a unique mineral composition out here is why we don't get the earthquakes the West Coast does.
Oh.
One of the big areas, and the Shawangunk Ridge is full of it, this mountain range is very, very well known for its claystone and soapstone when you get deep enough into the mountain. Acts like a giant shock absorber.
Yeah. It's not harder, it's softer.
Yep. So claystone, most people are not familiar with it because
It's around the reservoirs.
Yes, but here's the issue with claystone. When you find
It's
claystone,
not slate.
when you find claystone on the surface, it's already solidified hard because it's dried out. When you're underground and mine workings deep underground, claystone is malleable, like almost like a molding plastic.
The Schoharie Creek, is that high in claystone?
Soapstone.
Soap.
Soapstone.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, okay.
Soapstone is another derivative of similar to claystone, just different mineral buildup. It's like, for prime example, most of your major limestone deposits and dolomite deposits, historically, if you're looking at it at like thousands and thousands of years, most of your areas that have a high limestone deposit area and or a high dolomite deposit area, historically, and we're talking thousands of years ago, at one point were ocean floors.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Especially here.
Because again, limestone is calcium.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the other big things you could find in limestone mines, and there's been a small bit of documentation I found out with the Black Smoke mine, calcium carbide, which is a lime derivative. Lime can be used to produce calcium carbide, which is also then sequentially used in calcium carbide lamps.
Right.
So they had a local source of carbide as well as all this other stuff.
So they technically produce their own calcium carbide here in Rosendale for the calcium carbide lamps. One of the other big innovations that actually helped, especially on daily life of a miner in general, with say cooking in the mines, was the mine safety lamp. So, which again, calcium carbide lamp, open flame lamp, cylinder with a handle on top of it that would clip to your belt. The advantage with the mine safety lamp, couldn't ignite fire damp. It had a unique mesh screen on it that one of the mine colleges actually did a test on by putting in a giant enclosed container of propane, and it wouldn't ignite the propane with an open flame. Something about the way it was designed and the way the mesh screen is made on it and how small the openings are in the screen, it can't ignite flammable gases. That's what saved a lot of coal miners with methane explosions. Just a quick example of the dangers of fire damp. Fairmont 9 mine in West Virginia, which is the #1 most pivotal mine disaster that made federal changes in mine safety. Fairmont 9 exploded. They had a methane pocket behind one of the coal seams. They deleted a mountain range. It was considered one of the biggest methane deposits in West Virginia, and they detonated the whole methane deposit. Whole chunk of Fairmont mountain range gone.
Here's a very mundane question, but my brother always told me that you couldn't take a banana down into the mines in your lunch bucket because it would taste so weird. So nobody had bananas for lunch.
And I can actually give you I can give you an answer to that. Because when you're underground and you take a banana with you, because I did this myself in my early days, and you're deep underground, what are bananas known for having?
Potassium.
Potassium. When you're under pressure and you bite into a banana, they taste metallic. All baked.
It's true.
Yeah.
They taste metallic.
Wow.
Another thing that I've ate underground before that I'll never eat underground again, grapefruit. Because
Actually true. Wow.
yeah, no, but when you're underground down in the mines, bananas taste metallic. Banana flavor stuff, if it's a banana product that's made using banana, doesn't taste metallic. But if it's a straight banana, it tastes like metal. It's got a very metallic taste.
Banana pudding is okay, but not banana.
Banana pudding is fun. I've taken banana pudding down. I've taken like
Well, that would be
it's a
artificial.
type of pie, but it's made with banana. My mother makes it all the time. I like it.
Pie.
Banana cream pie.
Mm.
Take a slice of banana cream pie and work with me down on the ground. It tastes fine. Very slight metallic taste. Sometimes you want to have a banana.
It's hard to ruin a banana cream pie.
Yeah, but a straight banana by itself tastes metallic.
Mm.
Interesting.
Joseph, I'm sorry, I have to excuse myself, but this has been fascinating. I've really enjoyed listening to you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Why,
Well, if you ever want me around again to do another
That's
one.
right. Oh, yeah, yeah.